My best friend Eugene handed me the bride's bouquet and jokingly asked, "When are you getting married?" My boyfriend Jungkook, who was 4 years younger than me, cut in first and said, "Let's wait a bit longer." However, I said in 6 months, as preparing for a wedding takes time. Jungkook thought I was pressuring him, and with a frown he reluctantly agreed. After that he didn't come home all night under the pretext of having some work. Until a week before the wedding that he understood when he saw his brother's face in the wedding photos. The groom I had in mind had never been him from the very beginning. Jungkook is 25 this year and is in the prime of his life. Although I don't want to admit it, but I have to. That compared to him, I'm indeed a bit older. I've lost count of how many days he hasn't come home at night. In the evening I received a video sent by Jungkook's friend Jimin. Along with it was a message: "Sister-in-law, look at me, I'm much more obedient than Jungkook." I ignored it and clicked on the video. Men and women were dancing in the club, and there was Jungkook, whose fair features stood out particularly in the dance floor. A girl in a tight short dress came close to him, and he didn't refuse and put his arm around the girl's waist and swayed to the rhythm of the music. When the melody reached its climax, the girl tilted her head up and Jungkook tightly pinched the girl's waist and tilted his head, curved his lips, and into a smile. The girl stood on tiptoe and he lowered his head and kissed her. They looked like a perfect couple. The video ended abruptly there. Jungkook's friend Jimin typed again, "Sister-in-law, look at me, I'm much better than Jungkook." I transferred 5,000 won, that was the price for checking the surveillance footage, and then I blocked him. In my world everything has a price tag. Jungkook had become wild at heart. After deleting the video, I clicked on my favorites to look at the wedding decorations. Grandma is old and her only wish is to see me get married. It's something that has been planned long ago and can't be delayed because of him. Since he's not up to it, I'll just find someone else. At 10 o'clock in the evening, Jungkook's call came through. Steadily, the voice on the other end of the phone was loud. "Eun-ho, I'm not coming home tonight." I didn't say anything, and then he added, as feeling guilty, "They know I'm getting married and want to give me a bachelor party." I remembered this sentence. He had said it 7 times. Then I understood. Under the pretext of the bachelor party, he hadn't come back for a whole week. The noise from the other end of the phone came through the receiver, breaking the silence in the room. He called out again, "Sister, what's wrong?" His tone was cautious and tentative. He quietly waited for me to speak, and I looked up at the clock on the wall in a daze and said something that didn't seem to fit the context. "It's 10 o'clock. Others might not understand, but I knew what it meant, and so did he. It was a rule he had set when we were passionately in love. Before, at that time, he was still at school, and I often had social engagements outside and inevitably came back late. Once I didn't get home until nearly midnight. He was huddled on the sofa waiting for me with empty wine bottles all over the floor. When he saw me, he stumbled towards me in a daze and said to me, "Eun-ho, can't you come back by 10 o'clock? He was drunk, his face flushed, and he asked cautiously. At that time, we hadn't been together for long. His originally cheerful personality had become suspicious and sensitive because of me. Looking at his watery eyes and smelling the cream cake on his nose, I just couldn't bring myself to say no. So I gave him a birthday wish and said within a week. That week he blatantly sent messages, "Eun-ho, it's 10 o'clock, it's time to go home." Later he just sent, "It's 10 o'clock. I would subconsciously reply, "It's time to go home." It was our tacit little game, but perhaps because it was too tacit, I didn't even realize when this little game had stopped. When exactly did it stop? I thought about this question for the first time. Maybe it was when he started working, or when he graduated, or even longer ago. He hadn't said this sentence for a long time, as if he was certain that I would always come home on time. It was just a privilege I had granted out of soft-heartedness, and I could take it back whenever I wanted. Obviously he knew what I meant. After a long pause, someone on the other end of the phone called him. "Jungkook, come on, truth or dare." The voice got closer, and realizing that he was on the phone, the person sneered. Then he said, "Oh, checking up on him even before getting married? Can't he even have a bachelor party?" Jungkook didn't say anything, and the guy patted him on the shoulder and laughed. "Hurry up." Only then did Jungkook's voice ring out. He softened his tone and called me sister. I pinched the bridge of my nose and suppressed my emotions. "You don't have to come here anymore from now on." He seemed surprised for a moment and then said to me, "Sister, it's my last bachelor party." He sounded casual, but in fact he was complaining. Complaining about why I was pressuring him last week, I attended my best friend's wedding. My best friend handed the bouquet directly to me. Everyone knew that Henry and I had been in a relationship for 5 years. I had doted on him a lot. I'm 29 this year, not young anymore. My best friend looked at Jungkook but asked me jokingly, when do you plan to get married? Let's wait a bit longer, Jungkook said. After Jungkook said that, everyone's expression soured, looking at the bouquet in my hand. I'm only 25. So what, when he was 20 and 21 his wish was to marry me? Had he forgotten it by the time he was 25? That argument ended without a result. Because of his one-sided argument, I felt tired. Looking at his stubborn expression, I really didn't have the energy to argue with him about whether I was pressuring him or not. He stormed out of the door. He didn't come back all night, and the next day he told me he was attending a bachelor's banquet. Until today he was still attending it. The people on his side were urging him impatiently. Without waiting for me to speak, he hung up the phone on his own. After waiting for half an hour, his message finally came through. Sister, I love you the most. I'll come home tomorrow night. There's less than half a year left until the wedding date. I said if I don't make my stance clear, he'll definitely use the excuse of attending bachelor's banquets to get through this period. On one hand it's to express his dissatisfaction, and on the other hand it's to satisfy himself that he's grown up and always thinks that I can't live without him. But he's wrong. I've long understood that getting married to anyone is just getting married. So if I like someone and he's pleasing to my eye, I'll keep him by my side. If he's obedient, I'll spoil him. If not, I'll just replace him. Find someone clean, obedient and agreeable. It's as simple as that. Jungkook didn't pester me for answers like he did when we were passionately in love. Before, I watched as the clock hand past 12 o'clock and replied to his message. When I said you don't have to come back, I meant we're breaking up. I had given him chances. I thought I had done everything I could. Now, when I was just thinking about whether to ask my best friend to introduce someone new to me, suddenly there was a knock on the door. The unhurried knocks were particularly noticeable in the middle of the night. I stood up and pushed the door open. A tall man like a statue was standing at the door. He was carrying a cake in one hand and the tip of a cigarette in his other hand was flickering. He looked at me and called my name seriously, Eun-ho. Before I could say anything, he spoke again, his tone earnest. I've come to steal my brother's girlfriend. His slightly hoarse voice drifted into my ears with the night wind along with the smell of alcohol. I remembered when Jungkook brought me home. He stared at me fixed. At that time I thought about it again and again, and indeed I had no memory of him. Now, thinking about it again, I was still sure that I didn't know him. He stood in front of me, his eyebrows and eyes shrouded in smoke. He spoke again. Eun-ho, consider me. I folded my arms and stood still, looking at the serious man in front of me. I haven't broken up with your brother yet. He lowered his head to look at me, put out the cigarette and said calmly, you're not married yet. We're planning to get married. He then said, even if you get married, you might get divorced. What if we don't? Think about it, he said. At the same moment Jungkook's call came in and the ringtone kept ringing. I answered it and the voice on the other end lost the calmness from before. Nervousness and anxiety came through the phone to my side. Sister, what's wrong? Did you misunderstand something? I'll come home right away. Let's have a good talk. The man in front of me took a step forward and the smell of alcohol sprayed on my face that I couldn't tell if he was drunk or not. His face looked normal but his actions were crazy. He completely ignored the call I had answered and said to himself, you don't have to break up with Jungkook. I'm doing this voluntarily. I didn't know how much Jungkook had heard. His voice tightened. Who's next to you? I was just about to hang up the phone when the man in front of me said directly, it's me. Now Jungkook knew. He called out through the receiver, brother. Taehyung didn't say anything and Jungkook's tone suddenly became relaxed. Brother, it's good that you're there. Please help me persuade Eun-ho. I'll go back tomorrow morning. I can't leave here right now. Taehyung replied seriously and earnestly. Okay. Jungkook only heard the voice and not the content, so he entrusted me to his elder brother without worry. He didn't know that his brother was trying to steal his girlfriend. I hung up the phone. Tae stood quietly in place as if waiting for my judgment. I took a deep breath and said in a joking tone, go home, I'm really not interested in you. I was lying. He was the type I liked. He didn't talk much but was capable. When he liked someone he would spoil that person to the sky. When I was in a relationship with Jungkook, I was young and like the younger type who liked to act cute. Only after being in that relationship did I realize how bad it was, but even if I had no bottom line or morals, I wouldn't seamlessly start a relationship with my ex-boyfriend's brother. He didn't move his feet, instead he looked at me and said, "It has nothing to do with you, I'm the one who's seducing you." His gaze was so intense, as if it could strip me bare and look straight into my soul. After he said that, I thought for 2 seconds, then I stepped aside. In those 2 seconds I thought it through. Jungkook was the one who was immoral. First I proposed breaking up with him, then his brother took the initiative to approach me during my single period and we got together. It was logical and reasonable. My sense of morality was just that low. Because it was low, I felt good most of the time. I raised my index finger and looked at the man who seemed at a loss after entering the house. 3 rules. He looked up and I wiggled my index finger. 1. Our relationship won't be made public for now. I'm afraid Grandma won't be able to accept it. He didn't raise any objections. I stretched out my ring finger and said, 2. When Grandma passes away, we'll get divorced. He still had no objections, like a silent guard. I held up my thumb and said, the 3rd condition. 3rd, you can't restrict my freedom after we get married. He was still standing there in a daze. I made a childish shooting gesture at him with that pose along with sound effects. Bang bang bang. Whose heart was beating so loudly, exposing its owner's feelings so clearly? Tae seemed a bit disgusted, and then he realized it was his own. After all these years, his wish had finally come true. I also have one condition: let's get married as soon as possible. Okay. He was really eager. As soon as I said that, he sat on the sofa and started looking at the wedding scenes. I saw how proficient he was and asked, "Did you prepare for this?" Before he shook his head and answered my question while looking at the scenes. No. After a pause he added, "I used to think about how to steal you away." I opened the cake and sat aside watching him choose the wedding scenes. It was a strawberry cake. I picked the strawberries aside. He casually picked up the strawberries, ate them, and asked, "Don't you like strawberries?" I used to like them a lot. I forgot why I didn't like them anymore. I nodded and exaggeratedly said, "Strawberries are the most disgusting food in the world." He didn't ask why and nodded seriously and replied, "I got it." He naturally removed the strawberries from the cake and then lowered his head to browse the wedding-related matters. At 3 o'clock in the morning I was preparing for a wedding with my ex-boyfriend's brother. It seemed so absurd. No matter how I thought about it, but the person beside me wasn't affected at all. After choosing, he came to ask for my opinion. Is this one good? Is this style of invitation okay? Can we try on the wedding dress at this store? I'll make an appointment for the beginning of next month. Is that okay? One question after another, gradually turning the hazy idea of getting married into a real thing. Finally, I couldn't hold on any longer and went to the bedroom to sleep. It was only when I closed the door that I realized his excitement. His back was slightly bent, his body was tense, and he was staring intently at that small screen, his fingertips turning white from the force. I leaned against the door frame and looked at the man who had his head lowered, suppressing his emotions. "The guest room is here. Do you want to take a rest?" He stood up and followed the direction of my finger to look at the guest room. The movement of turning his head was like that of a robot. I couldn't help but chuckle softly. He opened his mouth with a normal tone, "I won't sleep." "Do you have the key?" I was puzzled, and then he said, "I'm going for a run downstairs. When I come back in the morning you might still be asleep." It made sense. The second one from the left on top of the shoe cabinet. "Run farther away and don't disturb others." He nodded, walked towards the door with a bit of clumsiness, and said awkwardly before closing the door, "Go to bed early." I turned around and saw his mobile phone lying on the living room table. Someone was calling him and the screen kept lighting up. I walked closer and saw Mom on the screen. Then a message came in. "I heard from Jungkook that you're at Eunho's place. You as the older brother should persuade Eunho for your younger brother." It wasn't that I wanted to look, it was just that the screen was too bright and the messages kept coming one after another. "You know Jungkook's personality. As his older brother you should be more understanding. Use the apartment you bought at the beginning of the year as the wedding house. Don't say Mom is partial. Anyway, you won't live there." I put the mobile phone face down on the table and walked into the bedroom. His mother's tone was really disgusting. The next day I woke up because I was hungry. I hadn't eaten anything the day before. After getting up I wanted to find something to eat in the kitchen. As soon as I opened the bedroom door I saw Taehyung. He was sitting properly on the sofa, still in the same posture as last night. He was wearing a pair of plain glasses and staring intently at the computer screen. When he saw that I got up he took off his plain glasses, stood up and went into the kitchen. Here are custard buns and soy milk, eat them. They're hot, he said. I ate the custard buns one by one while watching him work. When he saw that I was staring at him he didn't put on his plain glasses but turned the computer screen towards me. Is this style of inviting? Only then did I see clearly what he was busy with. He had made a PP for the wedding. It was so serious and old-fashioned, and he used the most common format. I covered my stomach and laughed. How could there be such a person? The rims of Tae's ears turned slightly red, but he held up the computer and waited for me to finish laughing. I took a look at the simple PPT and for some reason it amused me again, and I laughed once more. When he saw me laughing he laughed along with me. He had peach blossom eyes with deep double eyelids. His eyes were clear black and white, which made him look inexplicably fierce, but when he smiled the large arc of his upper eyelids made him look affectionate. His eyes were deep and misty, containing indescribable tenderness. I looked at him and he looked back at me. Suddenly the atmosphere became a bit ambiguous. The sudden sound of the door opening broke the ambiguous atmosphere. Eunho, I'm back, Jungkook said. Jungkook was back. It had been over a week since we quarreled and it was his first time coming back. Brother is here too, Jungkook greeted Taehyung. Tae turned the computer screen back. I took another bite of the custard bun and leaned back on the sofa to answer Tae's question. The second style looks nice. Tae gave a soft Jungkook felt that the atmosphere was strange, but he didn't know what was wrong, so he simply moved closer to me. Sister, did you misunderstand something? As he said that he tried to hold my hand, but I shook it off. He didn't continue to defend himself but quickly lowered his head and apologized. I'm wrong. In the past when we quarreled he was always the first to apologize, but although he apologized he never changed. I had long noticed his pride. I had repeatedly said that we should solve the problems, but he just wanted to quickly turn the page on them. Perhaps he didn't expect me to react like this and tentatively asked me, did my friend say something bad? As he said that he tried to hold me again but was interrupted by Tae. Eunho, what do you think of this wedding dress? I looked over. He had good taste. It was a classic style. I nodded and Jungkook then said, let's put it on hold for now. Jungkook suddenly realized that he couldn't get into our conversation. He looked at Tae blankly and opened his mouth. Brother. Tae didn't say anything, so Jungkook moved closer to him on his own. He stared at the computer for a while and finally said, brother, thank you. Your PPT is so detailed. He thought his brother had made it for him. Sure enough, his next sentence was, brother, send me a copy. Tae lowered his eyebrows, put down the computer and involuntarily clenched one of his hands. After looking at me he answered vaguely, it's not finished yet. Brother, you're so nice. When I go home this week I'll ask Mom to cook something delicious for you. You like spicy food, right? I remember Jungkook was happy and started hovering around me again. Sister, when is our wedding? I took the last bite of the custard bun and mumbled something. Tae answered him, first in 1 month. After the taste of the custard bun dissipated I smelled a faint fragrance of perfume on Jungkook. It was a fruity fragrance. I had never used that kind of perfume. On the other hand, Jungkook was shocked. Why is it so much earlier? Tae answered, it's better to settle it earlier. Jungkook frowned and replied, brother, I'm only 25. Although he was talking to his brother he was looking at me. His eyes full of complaints that he thought that advancing the wedding was my idea. Tae asked him, so what? Jungkook couldn't answer and changed the topic, saying gloomily, my friends organized a trip. We're leaving this afternoon and we'll probably be gone for about half a month. Go if you want to. I swallowed the custard bun and finally gave my opinion. After all, he had nothing to do with me now. I carried half a watermelon and leaned against the door frame. Jungkook was happy. He didn't expect me to be so easygoing and subconsciously wanted to bury his head on my shoulder. Tae interrupted again. Eunho, AAA, come and look at this. I stood up and walked behind him, looking at the screen over his shoulder. It wasn't the PPT on it but a few words. I'm a bit envious. It wasn't anger or jealousy but envy. Jungkook had already picked up his phone to plan the trip. I turned around and went into the kitchen. Jungkook was sending voice messages to his friends in the living room saying in a low voice, "We're leaving this afternoon, it's a bachelor trip." Tae stood up and walked towards me. He casually took the watermelon, skillfully cut it into pieces, put them on a plate, carried the plate of watermelon out and then started dealing with the mango. The air was filled with the fresh fragrance of cut fruits that I didn't know what he envied about Jungkook. I could only comfort him. Based on my intuition, I allowed him to exercise the rights of a fiancé and pushed him against the frosted door of the kitchen and gave him a brief kiss. Before Jungkook left, he raised his chin and asked his brother, "Brother, could you help me prepare for the wedding when I come back in the second half of the month? You can take it easy." Tae lowered his head, standing silently, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. It was only after Jungkook left that he asked me, "Can we go to see Grandma?" I said soon. On the third day of Jungkook's trip, his mother called me. She told me that Jungkook had a heart disease when he was a child and her words were all about asking me to be magnanimous. I perfunctorily said twice, then turned around and saw Jungkook's face on the hot search. It was a bonfire party with young men and women gathered around. Jungkook's face stood out particularly. He was holding the hand of a girl with short hair. With a bold smile on his face as he moved around the bonfire, the caption of the video read, "It's so nice to be young, you can attend a bonfire party with the person you like." I clicked into her profile page. At first, Jungkook's figure could always be seen in each video, either an arm, the back of his head, or the corner of his clothes. Later, Jungkook started to appear in the videos openly and cooperated with the girls' requests generously. "It's really nice to be young, but I didn't have time to care about their affairs. Tae had arranged so many things. I had to look at houses, try on wedding dresses, and get the marriage license. I was too busy and needed to go to bed early." The invitations that Tae had ordered finally arrived. He wrote down our names stroke by stroke, though he hadn't practiced calligraphy before, but he was very serious when he picked up the pen. His back was straight and he treated each invitation as if it were some precious treasure. He was busy during the day and wrote at night. When I was sleeping, he would go running downstairs. When I woke up, he would start writing again. I suspected that he hadn't slept these days. To let him relax, I simply took him to see Grandma. Grandma's spirit was a bit better, but she still couldn't recognize people. Her memory was hazy. She held my hand and called me, "Sweetie, come home with Grandma." Then she held Ethan's hand and called him Jungkook. "Jungkook, take good care of Eun-ho." In her eyes, I was still that little girl who needed taking care of. Grandma called the wrong person, but Tae didn't correct her. He squatted in front of her to make it easier for her to hold his hand and replied seriously, "I know, Grandma." Grandma's mental state was sometimes good and sometimes bad. She remembered Jungkook, which was the most troublesome thing, but Tae vowed to me that I shouldn't worry. What Jungkook did, he could also do, and he could even do it better. He said earnestly, "I will definitely make Grandma feel at ease. I'm better than Jungkook." Taehyung became even busier. He had to prepare for the wedding, take care of Grandma, and come back to discuss things with me. He was so busy that he seemed to wish he could split himself into three, but he didn't complain at all. In the past, when I was busy, Jungkook would go to take care of Grandma when he didn't have classes. Now it was Tae. Someone in the hospital probably had Jungkook's contact information and called him. He had been traveling for a week and called me for the first time. "Sister, is my brother taking care of Grandma?" I said yes. He seemed a bit flustered and his tone carried a bit of guilt. "Did Grandma ask my brother to take care of her?" "I would better do it when I get back. I take care of Grandma every day." After he graduated, my work became easier. I had plenty of time to visit Grandma in the hospital, but he seemed to become busier. Perhaps he didn't even know how long it had been since he last visited that old lady. Strangely enough, the busiest time for me was actually the happiest time for us. I replied, "No need." He changed the topic. "Let's wait for me to come back to take pictures of the wedding dress. Mom will take you to see the wedding house tomorrow. If you're not satisfied with anything, tell me." I hung up the phone. Tae was baking cookies in the kitchen. The whole room was filled with a sweet smell. The voice was on speakerphone, so he should have heard the conversation. He put the first plate of cookies into a bowl and brought it out. He stuffed it into my hands and told me we'll also go to see the wedding house tomorrow. After thinking for a while he added with my mom. I didn't say anything and he added another sentence, we'll go to see the house tomorrow, then get the marriage license and take wedding photos. The wedding will be next week. I laughed at him. Are you in such a hurry? He didn't deny it and admitted frankly, yes, I'm in a hurry. The next morning Jungkook's mother was waiting for me downstairs. I had met Jungkook's mother before. At that time Jungkook was acting cute with her and she smiled very gently, but I didn't expect that her interaction with Tae would be completely different from that with Jungkook. When she saw Tae, the smile disappeared from her face and she looked a bit stiff. When we walked closer she asked, are we going to see the house? Tae nodded and then opened the car door. I got in and she stood outside the car at a loss. It was only when Tae spoke that she got in the car, constantly wiping sweat with a tissue. Tae knew more about the wedding house than his mother did. He explained to me throughout the process, then he pointed at the doorway and said, when you move in you can buy a pink carpet. You should like it. The chandelier had a simple style. Pointing at it he said, you can change it. I didn't like the color tone before I could say anything. Tae preempted me, I guess you won't like the color of the paint either, you can change it. Tae's mother followed behind us. Tae pointed at every place and talked about his future ideas. It was quite nice and sincere. After looking around the whole house, Tae's mother finally found an opportunity. She asked Yunho, when do you plan to try on the wedding dress with Jungkook? All these things were planned by Tae. I was confused for a moment and subconsciously looked at Tae. He answered his mother's question the day after tomorrow. Jungkook won't be back by then. No one answered her. Maybe Jungkook's mother realized something. She called him into the bedroom. I wasn't very moral and followed to THM. What do you mean, as the older brother don't you want to use this house as Jungkook's wedding house anymore? It is the wedding house. Mom knows that you had a crush on her before, but she's your younger brother's girlfriend. Tae fell silent and let his mother scold him. She was so partial. When I was just about to interrupt, Ethan spoke first. Mom, I'm leaving. His mother asked, where are you going? To the hospital to take care of Eunho's grandma. This sentence laid everything bare. Her shrill voice rang out at Tae, she your younger brother's girlfriend. I heard Tae's reply. She won't be for long. On the day we got the marriage license, Tae unusually wore white and couldn't wait to pull me out. Before going out I received a call from Jungkook. He asked uneasily on the other end of the phone, sister, have you watched any videos recently? I replied, yes I have. Ethan lowered his eyes and quietly waited for me to finish the call. I took a step forward and held his hand, then said to the person on the phone, anything else? If not, I'm going to get the marriage license. Jungkook's tone tightened. Obviously he knew what had happened on the day we went to see the house, but he pretended to be relaxed. Sister, you're joking around again. I haven't come back yet. How can you get the marriage license? With a stamp and a photo taken, it was done just like that. It's just that the person in the photo wasn't Jungkook, who had been with me for 5 years, but his older brother, whom I had known for less than a month. Ethan took pictures of the marriage license with his mobile phone again and again. That he solemnly put the marriage license away and looked at those photos over and over again, saying, am I dreaming? I replied, not at all. The wedding dresses were very beautiful and I chose one from them. When I opened the curtain I thought Tae would still have expressionless face. Unexpectedly I saw his red eyes. Suddenly he raised his hand to cover his forehead and big tears fell down one after another. For a moment I was stunned. I didn't expect that someone with his personality would cry. The shopping guide handed me some tissues and said with a smile, you two have such a deep affection for each other. I took the tissues and lifted the hem of my dress to wipe Tae's tears. His tears were hot and his whole body couldn't stop trembling slightly. The tears dropped right into my heart one by one, causing in ripples and finally leading to a loud rumble like mountains and rivers collapsing. That I thought that I was going to break the first rule among the 3 rules we had agreed on. The wedding photos were taken beautifully except for Tae's red eyes. After taking the photos, Tae rubbed his mobile phone and looked at the photos one by one while wiping his nose. I turned his head straight and asked him, did you have a crush on me? His eyelashes were long and at this time they were stuck together strand by strand. His lower eyelids and the tip of his nose were red. He admitted frankly yes. I had a crush on you, perhaps because he didn't cry often. He couldn't help but shed tears again while speaking. Big drops of tears rolled down as if they were determined to make me feel soft-hearted and distressed, and couldn't help but give him a hug, coax him not to cry and show all my tenderness in front of him. While explaining he kept crying, making my heart soften completely. I've had a crush on you for a long time. He knew that I liked you, so he got close to you. The ways he chased you were all written in my notebook. Strawberry cake, I knew you liked it. Asking you to go skiing was my idea. He seemed to have suffered a great injustice. I handed him tissues while listening to his intermittent explanations. I didn't notice the continuous calls on my mobile phone at all when I got the wedding photos. I posted on Moments Got Married with 2 pictures attached. One was a photo of Tae looking at me with red eyes. The other was the marriage license with a red background on which it was written Eun-ho and Kim Taehyung. I didn't go home but went to Tae's house. After entering the door, maybe he realized that he had lost his composure and lowered his eyes, not looking at me. I went to take a shower. When I came out, he had placed the marriage license right in the middle of the display cabinet in the living room so that he can look up at it again and again like a child who suddenly got a candy but didn't dare to eat it. When he saw me come out, he turned his head to look at me and said coldly, Eun-ho. I sat beside him and listened to him continue. I envy Jungkook. Mom was always absent from my parents' meetings. I never got the gloves she knitted in winter. Everyone liked Jungkook, and so did you, he said with a self-deprecating laugh. In junior high school, I adopted a stray dog and Jungkook took it away. The dog died within a week. Later in high school, my composition was exhibited, but the next day it was splashed with ink and replaced by Jungkook's. I have a stomachache and can't eat spicy food, but since Jungkook liked it, they thought I liked it too. My first car, Mom asked me to give it to Jungkook. I've had a crush on you for a long time, but Jungkook was with you. He rambled on, saying whatever came to his mind. Finally, he just said, I've never been able to keep the things I wanted. It was as light as a sigh, but it really fell into my heart, maybe because we were kindred spirits. I kissed him as if I was kissing another part of myself. I clasped his fingers, and when we separated, I put a ring on his ring finger. He was obviously excited, and his chest kept rising and falling. The second of the 3 rules we had agreed on, I was going to break it. We were so in tune with each other that I didn't want to separate. The next day I was woken up by the noise. I got up with my body feeling sore and limp. When I opened the door, I saw that the display cabinet in the living room had been smashed. Jungkook was standing in the living room with his teeth clenched and his cheeks bruised. There was a cut on Tae's face made by glass. When Jungkook saw me, he ran over and asked through gritted teeth, what's the meaning of this? I ignored him and walked towards Tae, wiping the blood on his face with the cuff of my pajamas. Where's the marriage license? I asked. Tae replied gloomily, it was torn up. Jungkook pulled me from behind, his eyes red. Eun-ho, what do you mean? Only then did I look at him and reminded him, I remember I told you we broke up long ago. Maybe he remembered the week when he didn't come home all night. Maybe he remembered the breakup I mentioned. Maybe he remembered the PPT, or maybe he remembered the joke he thought it was when I said I was going to get the marriage license. We've been together for 5 years. Why are you treating me like this? We've been together for 5 years. What about Grandma? She won't agree. Grandma loves me the most. But when he kissed a strange girl without hesitation and happily went on those ambiguous trips in the name of being single, why didn't he think about the 5 years we had been together? Grandma was sometimes sober. She had sensed something and didn't call Jungkook anymore. Now she held Tae's hand and called him Tae one after another. She liked whoever was nice to me. Tae's mother also came. She looked at Tae and raised her hand to give him a heavy slap. Tae's face turned sideways and blood oozed from the corner of his mouth. How could you do this to your younger brother? Have you no shame? I pulled Tae behind me and said to the 2 unreasonable people, get out of my house. She saw me and then looked at Jungkook behind me. Finally, she couldn't control herself and raised her hand, trying to hit me. The expected pain didn't come. Tae blocked it. He said, because you're my mom, it's okay for you to hit me, but don't hit my wife. Jungkook was provoked by this sentence and stepped on the broken glass all over the floor. Who do you say is your wife? I didn't know who started the fight first. By the time I realized it, the two of them were already wrestling with each other. Although they were brothers, Jungkook couldn't beat Tae, who worked out regularly all year round, and soon he was at a disadvantage. Tae's mother was pinned down by me on the sofa. She just cried and cursed at me, and Tae, you're so partial. She stopped crying and began to retort, Jungkook is the younger brother, he has a weak personality. I just took a bit more care of him, why don't you admit it? Finally they were dragged out by the security guards. Tae also got injured on his face. Jungkook struggled and refused to leave. He called me again and again. I raised my hand and slapped him. It doesn't matter if Tae gets beaten, but I'm protective of my own people. I won't hit the elders, but I can hit you. After they left, Tae squatted down, silently swept up the glass, and then searched for the marriage license. Bit by bit from that pile of glass he put it together piece by piece, as if he was piecing together his broken self. I squatted down too and patted his head. It's okay, I'll give you a home in the future. On the wedding day, Tae's parents didn't come and neither did mine. The two of us invited our friends and held a lively wedding together. Grandma was sitting in a chair. She held my hand and called me sweetie, and then held Tae's hand and called him Taehyung. She repeated this over and over again, and Tae answered her every time. Grandma smiled. In this world, she was the one I worried about the most. I was afraid that she would have a grudge in her heart because Tae was Jungkook's older brother, but fortunately Tae really did what he said before. Grandma felt at ease with him. When Jungkook came to find me, Tae was learning to make a new kind of dessert in the kitchen. He stood at the door with dark circles under his eyes. Sister, if I hadn't been willful and gone to the bachelor party, we would have gotten married. I continued his sentence. He was frozen in a place, not knowing what came to his mind. I went on saying, after getting married you would have countless reasons to attend all kinds of parties and then cheat on me. We already broke up when your brother came to confess his love, and I would still be with your brother. How can you be sure that I would attend all kinds of parties after getting married and finally cheat? He was being stubborn again. I looked at his obstinate look and replied, because it's a fact that you cheated when you went to the bachelor party. Avoiding it once, there would still be a second time. Tae called me softly from behind. Yunho, taste the new flavor. Jungkook walked past me and shouted at Tae, how long do you think she'll like you? She said she could let go of our 5-year relationship just like that. What about you two? You've only known each other for a month. Can you last a year? Tae stood behind me and didn't answer his question. He just said, my wife and I are going to have dinner. Then he gently closed the door before going to bed. At night I asked him, how long do you think we can last? He kissed the tip of my finger. I remember that I won't restrict your freedom. I understood that the decision was in my hands. Half a year after getting married, I was pestered by a young boy, and in turn who was always hanging around in front of me. He called me sister in a sweet and clingy way. One day I came back late after signing a contract. Only when I got in the car did I find that he was the driver. He sent me to the door and stopped me. As soon as I got out of the car, I put on a cold face, staggered back a few steps and pushed him away. Then I turned around and saw Tae standing in front of the steps. I shouted at him, aren't you coming to help me? He walked over when he heard my voice and helped me with his eyes lowered. After getting home I poked his head. Aren't you angry? He didn't answer. After a long pause he said, it's your freedom. I poked his head again and told him, then I'll ask that boy to come up now. Isn't it my freedom? He didn't say anything again. He went out and came back with some cream puffs. I'm wrong, I'll change if you teach me. Yes, it was I who said that he couldn't restrict my freedom after getting married. I ate a cream puff and replied to him, you're not wrong. Then I told him seriously that every relationship I had been in was normal and there was no situation of two timing, but his anxiety didn't ease at all. The dark circles under his eyes were getting darker day by day. Since that boy started pestering me, he hadn't had a good sleep. He refused to check my mobile phone or ask me about it. He just tormented himself inside. I didn't know why he didn't feel secure. Once I woke up in the middle of the night and saw his face pretending to be asleep. I pinched his ear. It's void. I'll listen. If you care about me, forget it. It didn't matter if we didn't follow one of the 3 rules we had agreed on. He opened his eyes and said, there's nothing to care about, it's your freedom. I stared at him for a long time and then he buried his head in my shoulder. A muffled voice came. Fire that boy. Come home early and remember to send me messages. Tell me in advance if you're on a business trip. I'll be panicked if you're not here when I open my eyes. The 3 roll we had put on airs to make before were not followed at all, but I was willing to do so.